From getting,
that.
so you divorced, right?
Yeah, yep. And it was horrible. Like
Did you have
even
kids?
yeah, so like yeah, and like I said, I don't talk a lot about that for like they youngest, they
Yeah, yeah,
protection,
yeah. I got you.
but like man, when I say the amount of money that it costs to even get through that and having everything drained after being stable, right? 6 months of living expenses, crypto investments, big house, everything. And because I got in that very young, it was almost like once I got through it, the way that they do it is like I have to pay so much money to where they make it hard to even, for a guy to get back on his feet. But I'm thankful that when we talk about the battle block and the real estate stuff, that I have people in my corner that's like, I'm gonna give you that extra hand that you need to make sure you
Mhm.
don't sink and drown. And not a lot of men got that. And like I said, I did everything right, and at least thought I was doing everything right. And when it collapsed, it was like, what am I gonna do? And that's why like I would say guys like Rolo when he came through and was like, here's what as a man how you should think, and a lot of that information helped me get to the mentality that I have today. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm like, okay, what's the solution in today's climate for a guy like me to continue to move forward? And that's why I'm like I said, I'm still looking for answers and more of like, okay, here's what I know, but here's what I'm looking for next. So
Do
but
you
it's
want
it's
to have
crazy,
more
man.
kids?
It's one of them things where I don't know. Like the old me would say I would love to, but now I'm like, man, like, is it even safe to do so? Like, is it, because when you see how vicious it is, it's like, man, like if it goes bad. So, and then one of the things is like being in a relationship that long. I remember thinking that I knew everything, and then when you really get out here and see how cutthroat it is, because I
Yeah.
completely removed myself away from like, knowing about the dating world and what goes on out here. When you get out here, you like, man, this is cutthroat, right? So I'm like, at the end of the day, man, I don't even know for real.
I think that the biggest lie that men tell themselves is that the kids are worth it. I
Mm,
said this the other day.
mm,
The biggest lie, and not all men, but overwhelmingly the majority of men tell themselves is that the kids are worth it. Like they'll
mm,
say, they'll go through traumatic shit, or, because you got to understand that even with you being divorced,
mm,
you kind of still married to her for the rest of your life because you got a co-parent and you got to deal with her with regard to the children. So you kind of tied at the hip, whether you want
mm.
to or not, because you got kids with them, right? And so I
Yeah.
see a lot of guys, and they feel like, or they kind of justify the things that they've been dragged through by saying that, oh, but I wouldn't have my kid if it was, as a result of.
Mm,
And they lying to themselves, because if they had to do it all over again, is no way knowing and having a foresight. If they could rewind time, knowing what they would have to deal with as a result of dealing with that woman, and say,
mm,
okay, would you still have these kids? 9 times out of 10, I do not believe that most men would still go through with it. They would choose another woman, or they would just completely absolve themselves. So I actually understand what Rolo Tomasi is saying, and that, the whole vasectomy thing. I have a vasectomy, right? I have one daughter, and once I had that one
mm,
daughter, I decided to go ahead and get a vasectomy, because I already knew that I didn't want any more kids, and I was okay
mm,
with not even having kids. But once I determined that I only want one kid, um, I got a vasectomy, and that was the end of the conversation. And I think for me personally, it was the best decision that I've ever made. One of the best decisions
mm.
I've ever made is having a vasectomy.
Yeah.
So, when you consider that and you take that into consideration, I think you got to figure out what you want. You got to figure
Mm,
out whether or not you really do want to saddle yourself um, with another kid going forward, and take the chance and the possibility, because it would be different if you didn't have to deal with what you got to deal with. But, it's like playing
mm.
Russian roulette, like taking a
Yeah.
chance, possibly crapping out. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. No, for real.
it's
And I
wild.
will say, like, the mindset that I got now is like the least thing that I could do is make sure anybody that I'm responsible for is like taken care of. And that's how I look at it, right? So for me, so let's say if I got good income, everything's going well,
Hmm.
I get the bare like end of it. I make sure everybody's taken care of and like whatever's left, I get, right? And that's if it's like I get the bare minimum as long as the people in my responsibility are taken
Well,
care of.
see,
That's the
that's
people
because you're
that's,
a nice guy.
yeah,
If you
man,
go,
look, but
listen, Trey. If you go through it long enough, you're gonna become a savage.
yeah, and I'm getting there for real though.
You're gonna become a savage. I'm telling you, you're gonna
Yeah.
become a savage, and so you gotta take care of you. I always tell
Yeah.
guys on a regular basis, you got to be selfish before you become selfless. Meaning that
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to pour out of an empty cup. You can't help anybody until you help yourself first. And largely, when you become great, as you become great, your beneficiaries and the people that you surround yourself with are largely going to be the ones that benefit as a result of your greatness. So
Mm-hmm.
don't always look, and this is just my personal advice, take it how you see fit, compare it against what your lifestyle is or whatever. But don't always look to pour into other people before you pour into yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take care of you. You got to look after you because at the end of the day, nobody is going to look out for you more than you, and then everybody else benefits as a result of it. So you got to be
Mm-hmm.
selfish too before you be
Mm-hmm.
selfish.
No, that's real. See, like I said, when we talk solutions, man, like I'm like, okay, bet. Like you don't, and there's more nuances to it. So when I hear you talking, it's like when you hear family, man, people would think like one thing, but hearing you break down those nuances, it can be surprising to some people. And I know that's what we need, so
Yeah. Let me ask you a
yeah.
question. Let me pivot for a second. So, what made you got this thing that you got going on, and what you buying back the block, right?
Hmm.
So you participating, or I'm gonna let you explain it, about what it is that's buying back the block.
Yeah. So really what it is, I grew up on the west side of Detroit, Dexter and Linwood.
Mm,
And when I grew up over there, it was like we had a lot of community, a lot of family. Like people could just go knock on each other's doors. Everybody got along, but it was rough. It was a lot of like territory, crime and oh, you from this part of Detroit, you from that part, and a lot of shootouts and stuff. But it really shaped how I seen life. I started recording music over there when I was like 12, and really just learn how to hustle. All the stuff that the guys was teaching me in my neighborhood about how to survive, how to defend yourself, how to take care of like, your family and all that. I learned it there. So then I leave, I start traveling and doing music and going all these different places. Come back and the neighborhood was completely abandoned. And then
mm-hmm.
you hear like, oh, it was the drugs, it was the violence, it was everything that tore this neighborhood apart. So it's like, man, like, how can we bring this back? And when I seen my sister sent me like the house I grew up in was on sale for $1,000. I'm like, man, that's all they think this house is worth, $1,000.
Yep.
And I missed out on it because I didn't know nothing about real estate. And that taught me something like, dang, just because I didn't know how to buy this, I just passed on it. 2 years later, I learned about real estate and I bought 5 properties last week. And I'm like, I can't even get this house yet because I missed out on it for 1,000. Now they're gonna hike the price up and it's gonna cost more. But at
Mm.
least I know now, you know what I mean? So
What's your goal, like with the whole buying back the block? What's your goal? Like, what made you, or what gave you the battery? What put the battery in your back to actually incentivize you to do something like this?
so when I go over there right now, it's like nothing. It's like I can walk over there right now and you'll see like one or two people or like one car driving by. And back then it was like populated. Even if it was a lot of like shady stuff happening, it was still community, family. So like you don't see nothing over there. So I want to see it populated. I want to see the house I grew up in, people living in there. I want to see an active community. And I see it as like it's not a lot of people that grew up over there that's able to come back and really do it. So I want to see businesses over there. I want to see like my family back over there living and home ownership, and I want to have some ownership in it as well. So that's the